Great. We good? Cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Memphis meeting. Obviously, my name is Travis, if you forgot for some reason. I'm glad you all are here. Before we get started, I want a quick reminder, because this is a big requirement for this one. In order to come on this trip, you have to have completed 7th grade by the time we go. So if you are currently in 7th grade right now, that means by the time we go, you will have finished 7th grade and can come on the trip. But if you are currently in 6th grade, that means that this trip is not for you, but don't worry, we'll get you on plenty of other trips. But I just wanted to let everybody know that up front and be very clear about it, because that is a hard cutoff from our partner. And even that, I was doing some wiggle room with them, but this trip's just a little bit more intense, and so we're gonna need that age requirement on that. So for those of, and now that we're through that big one, I want to talk all about this Memphis trip with everybody, and I want to start where we start all of our trips here in Connect Youth, which is with our vision, which is in Acts 1:8. It says this: "And you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." So this is kind of the idea of this, as we probably know from our Mission Akron talks, but I want to remind everybody, because it's really important, that when Jesus, right before he ascends to heaven afterwards, this is one of the last things he tells his disciples. And he tells them this because he's saying, when you go and take my message, you go and be my witness in the world, and telling people of the love that I have for them, you're going to do so first in your backyard. He's telling them to this in Jerusalem. That's why we do Mission Akron. He says, go to Jerusalem. Then he says, go throughout Judea, which is a little bit further out from Jerusalem. And then Samaria is even a little bit further out. And then the ends of the earth is exactly what it says. It's the ends of the earth, right? And so in this, we're going to kind of follow that model for Connect Youth and our missions trips. And so kind of the cycle we go on, we take a local trip. We'll go on a national trip, which is somewhere in the United States. We'll go back to a local trip, because our backyard's really important. And then we'll do an international trip after that. So last year, we just did our Mission Akron trip. This year, we're doing our national trip, which is going to be going to Memphis, which we're going to talk all about. Then we'll go back to Mission Akron next summer. And then the summer after that, we will go international with everybody. So that's kind of where we're going, and the vision of why we're doing this is because, well, Jesus said so, and I think that's a good reason to do something. And so we're going to, does anybody have any questions about our vision moving forward? Yes?
Do we know where the international trip is?
No. And so that is for 2 years from now, or 1 year from now, Travis to figure out, not for today, Travis to figure out. And so we will figure that out whenever the Lord leads us and wherever he leads us to. And that's a great question, but one I'm not privy to. And so Memphis is actually a very amazing city. You're probably wondering why we ended up landing at Memphis. It's a couple of reasons. One, Memphis is actually a massive place for the history of the United States, but it's one that's not often talked about. It's one that has a lot of history when it comes to the racial divide within the United States and within the civil rights movement in of itself. There's a lot to learn about the history of that. The National Civil Rights Museum is actually right there, right in Memphis as well. And so we will be that is part of the trip. We are going to be going to the Civil Rights Museum. There's a lot of education to learn about where we are as a country, where we are as people, and what it means to love people who aren't like us. So that's part of why we're going to Memphis. I'll walk through that in a second. There's a great organization we're working with, which I will walk through their mission and vision, and you will see why this starts to make sense for us here in Akron, of why we would want to partner with these guys, because they're doing something that's really neat. The flip side of it is Ashley and I had very significant mentors in our lives, and their names are Ivan and Heather Strongmore. They are awesome, and they live in Memphis now as well. And so part of this was sprung up because they approached us about it, and we're like, hey, you should bring your youth group down here, because there'll be a lot to learn and a lot to know about the gospel. And so they're awesome people as well, and they actually put me in contact with this organization because I was talking to them about Mission Akron, and they said, oh, you got to talk to these guys, because they are very similar minded to what you just said. And here's why. Here's Serve 901's mission. This is the group we're going to be working with. They're the people who we have partners down there. They're going to be working with us while we're there on the trip. But here is their mission, is to engage, learn, and serve. And so when they say engage, they believe in engaging your own city to understand the everyday life of the city to best serve them. So this is that idea of Mission Akron, right? We got to care about our own backyard. We got to care about the city we live in. We got to get involved in the community to know who lives here, what makes them tick, and why they need Jesus, right? So this idea of engaging the city, not just being a passive participant in where you live, but actually engaging that and understanding that and knowing about the city and the place that you live is really important. So they said that. And then their other part of their mission is to learn. Memphis has a rich history that has shaped it. There's a lot to learn about justice, the civil rights movement, and reconciliation that Jesus offers. There's a very rich history of Memphis that has really shaped the infrastructure. The history shapes every place that you go. Memphis is just uniquely shaped by that history. And there's a lot to learn, a lot to grow there, and that reconciliation piece is huge. It's all about, that's what Jesus came to do, right? He trusted us with the ministry of reconciliation. And that word just means to bring back to. And so that's what Jesus came to do. He's entrusted us to be ambassadors of that, as 2 Corinthians 5 talks all about. And so this is what it means when they say learn. There's a lot to learn about that, so that as we're engaging the city, as we're engaging our backyard, we can know the best way to stand in the gap for people to be Jesus to them. So that's what Serve 901 does as well. And they say serve, supporting and serving with local groups in Memphis for city improvement. There's a lot of great groups in every city that are doing a lot of amazing things, as we know from Mission Akron, right? And there's ways to come alongside those individuals who are doing many great things. You don't have to, and when you do that, it's actually beautiful. Partnership in that way is beautiful, because it means that for us, like why we do Mission Akron, is being Connect Church. We can't do everything that the city of Akron needs. We can't do it. We can't pull it off. But there's plenty of great organizations in Akron that we work with regularly for the betterment of the city, to reach more people for the gospel. And that's exactly what Serve 901 does as well. So that's kind of their mission and their vision. And when I came across it, I was like, I think we need to hang out with these guys. They get it. They do this every single day. This is they don't just run trips. The guy who's running this, his name is Jeff Riddle. I did already ask him. He's not the Riddler, but he does a bad joke. Don't worry about it, Batman. And so Jeff did tell me that we are not exactly 100% sure which organizations we will be working with, because that's always a moving target depending on, as we get closer, what that looks like. But he, on his everyday, day-to-day life, he does this. So like his job is doing Mission Akron in Memphis 24/7. That's what he does all the time, with all of his people, with all his staff, with all the organizations they work with. So that's what they do. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. Does anybody have questions about Serve 901? Okay, so that's the group we're working with. I want to go over our accommodations and our schedule for June 10th through 17th. Part of the accommodations are Serve 901 has a bunkhouse that is downtown, that's right near the Mississippi River, which goes right down through the whole city of Memphis. And so that we'll be staying in said bunkhouse. They have a kitchen, they have all of that. So part of the accommodations is Serve 901 is providing a couple of meals for us, but the rest of the meals we will be cooking. We'll be doing that ourselves. We'll be splitting each other off into different cook teams and clean teams. And one night you might be on, your responsibility is cooking. One night your responsibility will be doing all the dishes. And we'll flip-flop and vice versa and move around and do all that. And it'll be awesome. It'll be a great way to serve one another, and also a great way to be involved in each other's lives, because cooking is a big part of that, right? Food is a big part of our life, and so we get to do that together. And so that's part of what we will be doing. The other thing is Memphis, when they say they want to serve local, they mean that. So part of going local is they encourage us as part of the trip to go get involved in local businesses there. So the local great Memphis barbecue joints, we will be going to eat at one of those, don't worry. There's a ton of really great coffee shops in Memphis that are in walking distance from the bunkhouse, and so we will be checking some of those out. There's plenty of things to do in Memphis. It's a very awesome city, but Part of it's going to be that we're on purpose going to choose to not go to chain places for the benefit of the local place that we're in, because that's part of the culture. You'll get to know the city better that way, okay? So that's kind of our accommodations. The schedule, this is kind of the rough schedule that they gave us that we'll be working with. So Saturday on June 10th, this is all subject to change. This is a sample. This might change the next meeting. I don't know. Like I said, this is a sample of what it might look like. But we'll be leaving for Memphis on Saturday. When we arrive in Memphis, we'll need to go grocery shopping for the week. And then we'll kind of hang out. We'll have dinner. We'll hear from the people from Serve 901 a little bit, but we'll mostly do our orientation on June 11th, which is the Sunday. We'll wake up, we'll do breakfast. We have a church. We'll be going to a church over there called Hope. I forget the full name, but Hope something. The church is great. I know the pastor. He's awesome. This guy named Rufus. He's amazing. But we'll be going to them. And then we'll have our orientation with Serve 901 after, and then that day most likely will be the day that we go to the Civil Rights Museum right off the bat. We'll go hang out there, we'll be with them, we'll learn a lot. It'll be a challenging thing, but it'll be a really good thing. And then Monday through Thursday are all kind of the same. Monday through Friday, it's going to be like breakfast. Think Mission Akron, right? Breakfast, devotions, we go to a city partner, we eat lunch while we're there, we go to a city partner. In the afternoon, we have dinner, we do reflection time back at the bunkhouse. That's kind of the basic schedule for that. The difference here, though, from Memphis, if you don't know, is super, super, super hot. Memphis is aggressively hot. And so there are two things, and when we get to packing list, which we're not doing today, but you will need to bring a ton of sunscreen, non-negotiable. It is hot. And the other part of that is what Jeff told me as well, is with our city partners, basically because the weather is so hot, we can only be outside from like 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., and then the rest of the time we have to be inside, or else people start passing out, and we don't have a good time with that. So like, it'll be, if we do like the manual labor outside stuff, it's in the morning, and then he said at the evening, after lunchtime-ish, we'll be going inside for whatever we're doing. Some of the city partners that they work with are really amazing. He said there's going to be a mix of think manual labor, painting, gardening, that kind of stuff. There'll also be a mix of, they work with some really great after-school programs that go all through the summer as well. So there'll be some time to have relationship with people in the community that come over to these programs, and we'll be able to interact with them and teach them and do all that kind of stuff as well. So there'll be different types of jobs. They're not just all going to be one type of thing. They're all a big variety because, again, they reach the city in more ways than just one. So that's kind of what that's going to look like a little bit. And so that's kind of what the trip might look like. That will continue to evolve and change with every meeting, which actually brings me to our training meeting schedule. So our training meeting, here's some important dates. There's 5 meetings that we're going to be having from now until then. The first one is on January 15th, and they'll all be after, like we are right now in here. These meetings will have lunch provided. They will be longer meetings. They'll be probably about 2 hours or so, but we will be doing them here. January 15th will be the first meeting. February 19th is when your $50 deposit is due for the trip. And then March 12th we'll have a meeting, and then this is the big one. This is the big one everybody needs to pay attention to. April 2nd is mandatory attendance at that meeting. You cannot miss that meeting, full stop, and the reason why is because your first $200 is due, and that is non-negotiable. There is 0% wiggle room on that number. The first $200 I have to get from everybody to go to Serve 901 to fully pay off all the things that they're trying to do for us, like secure our tickets for the Civil Rights Museum, like buying us some meals, like getting all that stuff ready. So that's not me that needs the $200. That's Serve 901 that needs a $200. So I don't have, like with Mission Akron, sometimes I can have wiggle room because it's me running it. That's not the case with this one. So April 2nd, your first $200, that includes a $50 deposit. So if you do it, if you math it out, right, that's some easy math. You do February 19th, your first $50 is due, and then April 2nd, $150 additional needs to be due. And again, I don't have wiggle room with that. If you don't have your $200 in at the end of April 2nd, you will not be going on the trip. Like, I'm dead serious about that. You will not be going on the trip if your $200 is not in on April 2nd. So that's a big one, and it's one that we need to make sure that we stick with because, again, I don't have wiggle room on that. So, and then your final meeting will be May 28th, which is when the final payment is due. We will go over payments, we'll go over the total cost of the trip in just a second, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew about April 2nd because this is the big one, that the first $200 is due. Then that's a hard stop. Like, not like, oh man, I forgot my $200 at home, and can I come bring it on Monday? Nope. I have to turn around and give them the money that Monday morning first thing. Yes?
Kind of a random question.
Yep.
Kind of a relevant question. Will we be flying there?
No, we are driving. Okay, so, at least, assuming we get vans, we are driving. But we're going to have to drive because we're going to have to get around the city anyway. So we're going to go over some expectations and requirements first before we get to the rest of it. Here's some expectations. Remember, this is a national trip, so expectations are a little higher than they were for Mission Akron. And so the first one, like we talked about, you have to have completed 7th grade prior to the trip. You'll need to have 20 serving hours here at the church between now and when we leave. You also need to come to our Sunday morning youth time attendance 2 out of every 4 weeks because we'll be going over, remember this is part of training, this is part of getting developed as people, this is part of getting ready for a trip, this is going to be time where we can do some good discipleship with one another, we can get to know each other better, we can also serve because part of Sunday mornings is coming here for Bible discussion and then going over and helping with hospitality team. So part of this is going to need to be 2 out of every 4 weeks. You are here for Sunday morning at 9:45. So that is part of the requirements as well. Training meeting attendance. You need to come to 4 out of those 5 meetings we just talked about, but April 2nd cannot be the one that you miss. April 2nd is like the required big meeting. We just talked about that, but you got to be at that one. This one I want to talk about because if you hear it at first glance, it might scare some of you, but it is not a terrifying thing. You need to know how to share your story and the gospel with somebody. And you'll need to share that with me sometime between now and when the trip goes. Everybody will have to sit down with me who's on the trip and you'll have to share your story. And here's what I mean by that. There's twofold. The reason that that's really important is, one, if you are a follower of Jesus, you need to know how to share what Jesus has done in your life. That is part of everybody's job as being a follower of Jesus. You need to be able to tell somebody else the hope, for the reason that the hope that is within you, to what Peter talks about. Peter says that everybody needs to be able to know why Jesus changed their life, why he changed your heart, why your life is different, and why your life is still difficult. It's not when you accept Jesus that everything becomes good immediately, right? So you have to be able to engage a conversation with people, and that's part of when we go to work with Serve 901. Some of our partnerships are going to be working with people who don't know Jesus in a relational way. It's not just going to be painting a wall the whole time, for example. So if you're talking to a kid who's coming in for an after-school program because their parents don't know what to do with them during the summer, you have an opportunity to share the gospel, to share your story with them. And here's what I am not saying. Here's what I'm not saying. I think oftentimes when we think of sharing the gospel, we think of sharing, we have to be able to go through the Bible passages that make sense and tell them why Jesus is the only way to heaven and go through like some sort of curriculum, if you will, of like I have to know how to tell them the Romans Road or I have to know how to tell them the 5 points of spiritual decisions and nope, not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, if you're a follower of Jesus, and if you're coming on this trip, I want you to be able to know how to articulate how Jesus changed your life in about 2 minutes. And if somebody asks you, hey, why are you doing this? Why did you come from Akron, Ohio to hang out with me? You can look at them and go, well, actually, I'm coming here because I love you, I care about you, and the reason why is because Jesus loves and cares about me because he showed up in my life in these ways. It's nothing more complicated than that. Right? So I want to be able to know, and we need to be able to know each other well enough that you know how to do this. Because part of what we're doing is going to Memphis to talk to people about Jesus. And so I'm not saying this is going to be some door-to-door evangelism cold call thing where you knock on the door and you've got 20 seconds to tell them why they're going to hell and why Jesus... None of that. I'm saying you need to know your story. Okay? And then we're also going to read and reflect on the whole of the book of 1 Peter between now and when we leave. So everybody on the trip, Peter is 5 chapters. If you notice, there are 5 meetings. So the idea is keep a journal and read 1 chapter of 1 Peter before we get to the next meeting. So after this meeting, you have from now till January 15th to read 1 Peter chapter 1. Do some reading, do some reflecting, right? I don't want to give you a game plan of how to do that, but some ideas of what you could do. Write down things that surprise you. Write down reasons write down what you learn about Jesus in that passage. Write down questions you have that you're confused about. That's a great thing to write down when you're reflecting. But part of what you're going to see in 1 Peter, and why I'm so excited about that, and why we're reading it as a group, is because Peter's all about what it means to serve other people. Peter is all about what it means to show up in other people's lives and put yourself aside for the benefit of somebody you don't know and who is a stranger. That's the crux of 1 Peter. And that's exactly what we're going to go do in Memphis. We're putting our needs aside for the benefit of somebody that we've never met. And so that's what we're going to read and reflect on together as a group. So there'll be 1 chapter read before each meeting, and then this is a big one. As always, you need a heart to serve. As always, you need a heart to serve. The reason we go on this trip is because we want to serve other people and be the hands and feet of Jesus. If you're coming on this trip for any other reason, if you're coming because it'd be a fun week away, if you're coming it's going to be some fun, but you're going to be dead tired by the end of this trip. So that's not a good reason to come on a trip. If you're coming because you want to hang out with your friends, not a good reason to come on the trip. It's something that is cool and wonderful, and you will be able to do that, but that's not the reason you come on this trip. You come on this trip because you have a heart to be the hands and feet of Jesus, because you know that Jesus changed your life. You want to go take that light into somebody else's life. You want to go be the hands and feet. You want to go be the John the Baptist type person that we talked about this morning in church. And that's why we go. And so all of these are expectations. All of these are requirements for coming on this trip. And if I see that these things are failing, I have grace for people. I love you guys. I'm not going to be except for April 2nd. I will be about that. I'm going to be very strict about that one. But the rest of these I can talk to you about. But what I mean by that is, just because Travis can be graceful does not mean you just go, oh, I'll just take a hit on that one. He'll understand. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to take those by a case-by-case basis on whether I think that this is a game changer, that you're not meeting that or not, or whatever that might look like. Because I have, and many times on trips, told people they can't come for reasons such as these before, and I unfortunately might have to do it again. I don't know. I hope not, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that those are the expectations, those are the requirements, okay? Now, we're going to go over to the pricing for this. The pricing for this is $475 per person, and the first $200 is due on April 2nd, like we talked about. So the first $200 is due on April 2nd, and then we have to have it all paid in full by May 28th with an emergency medical form on file. So it's $475, first $200 due on April 2nd, paid in full on the 28th. That is for both middle school and for high school. If you are completed 7th grade through completed 12th grade, that is your cost. That is what we are going with. So if you also notice, that first $200 goes towards Serve 901 and all the ways that they're accommodating us with the bunkhouse and with everything else. The rest of the $275 is going towards your food, for your transportation down there, for all of those, the rest of the details that go into the trip that Serve 901 isn't covering. Fundraising then, we just did breakfast with Santa. We will be getting together chocolate-covered strawberries and pepperoni rolls. I have another couple big fundraisers in the works that they didn't quite come together just yet that I can't exactly talk about right at this moment, but there are some good things that are to come for sure. So there'll be ways to raise money for this trip. And we did just do breakfast with Santa. I have not done the numbers yet on how much we raised from that because I didn't. It was yesterday. And then also, if you are wanting to sign up for this trip, you can do so on connect316.com. There is a form there that you can sign up. It is the same thing as a Mission Akron form. You fill it out. You don't have to pay your money when you sign up for the trip right there. And if you want to sign up, the sign-ups are live, and so I would love to have each of you on that trip. Now finally, do we have questions? Who has questions? Yes.
The special dinners, we talk about like going to the barbecue type places.
Mm-hmm.
Is that included in the 475, or do we need to give our kids extra?
One of those barbecue trips will be included, for sure. So that is a thing. So Greg, the question that Greg asked for the sake of everybody watching online is, he asked, is the barbecue, the trip to Memphis barbecue joints together, is that included in that 475? Or will we need to give extra money? We will be taking at minimum one trip to a barbecue joint together that is included in that 475, yes. If additional trips, if you want to go, you can bring your own spending money. Or coffee shops, same thing, spending money. You'll want a little bit of spending money because again, there's some really cool things to do in Memphis. One of them is free though, and he actually told me last week, in walking distance from the bunkhouse is a really great park, and every night in the summer they do free concerts, and because it's Memphis and there's a lot of really good music there, the music's actually good. Like it's not like free concert Joe Schmo with a guitar, like it's good music and we can go to that as well. So there's plenty of stuff to do for free, there's plenty of stuff to do if you want to bring some extra spending money. Great question. Not always. There's a lot of jazz in Memphis, there's a lot of good stuff. There's some blues. Yeah.
I know this is subjective, but is there a recommended value that we should give our kids to have the extra cash? $100, $200, something like that?
Great question. So Greg asked, is there a recommended value for spending money while in Memphis? I don't really know the answer to that question. I would think somewhere between like $75 and $100 might be good. Let's just put a bigger range. $50 to $100 I would think would be good. More or less at your discretion. But yeah, I mean, you know the things you buy on a mission trip. It's like you get the cool T-shirt, you go and get some extra coffee, you get a good pulled pork sandwich somewhere. I don't know. So like, ish. Yes.
So the transportation there, is that going to be the transportation you use during the week, or
Yeah.
do they provide the transportation?
It's both. And the transportation there is also our transportation while we're there.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
How long is the drive?
9 hours.
I don't know.
I did the math, it's 9 hours.
You did the math just like on your own? Link's a cartographer over here. It's between 6 and 9 hour drive. I don't remember. I looked it up at one point and I forgot.
Will we be stopping anywhere there?
Nope, you got pee in bottles.
Hotel
No, we're just driving straight through. We will drive straight through that one day and we'll be right down there. We're not stopping on the way down.
What
Good
time will
question.
we be?
I don't know that all just yet.
It's at 8 a.m.
That was the sample schedule.
Yeah,
Yes.
Go on, we'll
What's
hold it.
the cell phone policy for kids given their distance from home?
Yes, you will have your cell phones, but I will be collecting them while we're on the job site so people aren't distracted while we're there, but you will have more access than Mission Akron, but you won't have them the entirety of the time, all the time. Make sense?
Perfect, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, Travis, so I've never been involved with the fundraisers. How does that money get distributed or designated? Do each of the kids do things and then they get a certain amount based on what they do, or how's that?
Yes, great question. So the question is, how do the fundraisers work for the youth? It's kind of an and both, depending on the fundraiser. So for example, Breakfast with Santa was a big event that we did all together, and the money raised went to the people who were there to serve and help. Like, it wasn't the Breakfast with Santa, the money, like, if you weren't there volunteering yesterday, you don't get part of the cut. If you were there, you get part of the cut. Chocolate covered strawberries, pepperoni rolls, anything we would sell, that all is dependent on the individual student. So, for example, like last year we did chocolate covered strawberries. I think were $10 a box, and you had forms that you went around with order forms from point A to point B. You turned them all in. You'd come and dip them yourself, and then whoever's, however much you sold by the end. I think the profits were like $8 on the profit, $8 per box. If you sold 10 boxes, you got $80. If you sold, math, right? So it's different. So like, if we do another event that's like Breakfast with Santa, that'll be the pool that gets distributed. If we have individual fundraisers as well, though.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
For parents who aren't familiar, can you explain the accounts for the student?
Yes, good question. So the question is, how do the accounts work for students? So all of that money gets turned into the church itself, and then between me and Sue and Rox, we all keep track of it. So each student has an actual account on our youth mission budget. So I have a big spreadsheet of every student that is in there, and you have a designated amount that is like, think of it like a church bank account, if you will, quote unquote. Not a great phrase, but kind of. And all of that money is in that account. You cannot withdraw that from that to use it for other things. That money goes towards missions, it goes towards camps, conferences, retreats. Anything that we do here at the church, that money can go toward, but that is how that works. And so you can always ask me. Generally, at every meeting, we have the running accounts with us, and you can come talk to us and say, hey, how much is in my account, or whatever, and I'll get it for you. Yes?
I'd also say that you can add to that account at any time.
Yes.
So that box right over there, at any time, you can, if you want to throw $20 in an envelope and designate it for your kid, yeah, that box right there, that's called the box.
So that is another thing to say again for the recording. You don't have to just raise that money from the fundraisers we do, though they are helpful. If you have money right now, if you get Christmas money and you really want to donate it towards your trip or whatever it might be, or maybe God shows up in your life and just drops $500 in your mailbox, like that happened to me once when I was going to the UK, like legit, not kidding. I don't know who gave me the $500, but that happens sometimes. And so all you need to do is grab that money, write your name and what it's for on the envelope. Don't just put loose money in the box, because I'll keep it. I'm just kidding. That is not even close to truth. But it'll go towards youth missions if it's blank, but I just won't know who to give it to. So you can put it in the box right here, this splatter paint one. You can just, even if we're not in here right now, if like you come in on a Sunday and you forget, you have it in your pocket, you can walk in here and drop it in the box. But don't just hand me money, because if you try to hand me money, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it back to you. I'm going to say, go put it in the box. Because that box is so I don't lose it, because I will lose it, because if it's in my pocket, it's gone. Because, yeah, yes.
Is there like a fund in this? Or is that the museum?
It's part of the museum, but there's going to be some fun things built in as well throughout the rest of the trip. And that last, I think it's either Thursday or Friday, one of the two. I forget which night we're doing. I think it's Thursday. We're doing like a night on the downtown Memphis. So like we're gonna go downtown and hang out and do some stuff down there, and it's gonna be fun. So like they have some other things built in with that. Part of that's going to be, they've run trips like this a lot, this organization. So like it's not just gonna be, you'll have some good times. Don't worry. Yes.
Okay, so I have a random question. So students have like their account.
Mm-hmm.
If for some reason they can't attend this one.
Yep.
And they still sell and they do all that stuff, does it still go towards like
in their account for next year, or?
Good question. The question is if I raise money for this trip and then for some reason can't go on this trip, what happens to the money in my student's account? Great question. Yes, it just stays in that account, and if next year we go to do Mission Akron and you already raised all the money for Memphis and for some reason you can't go, you can just use that money for the next trip or the next thing that we have going. Yes, it's not designated just toward this one trip. It's donated to your specific student, and they can use that for other events that we run as the youth.
To add to that, say Lizzie can't, like she graduates out, you could push that money down into Aaron's account.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so that is also part of it, that if part of why you can't go for whatever reason is, let's say you are a graduating senior and it turns out you have to go to college sooner than you thought you had to or something. I don't see why that'd be a problem as the second week of June, but let's just say in general, if that was the case for some reason and you had a sibling or whatever, you could donate that money to your sibling's account or somebody else in the youth group.
Just want to make a comment about that. This is like our 5th child through this. And one of the things that's beneficial is to think of it as a long haul, so to speak, like 4 years of fundraising. Because the international trip is coming, and that's always very large. So if you build that account, don't think, okay, well, I got this next thing done. Keep working, keep selling strawberries, keep selling pizza, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Greg made a very good point, and I'll reiterate it, is that just because you may have raised enough money for this trip, because your account is running for your entirety of your time in high school, middle school, you'll want to keep going on those fundraisers, keep going hard. Let's say you get all your 475 done in one fundraiser, you can keep raising money because then that can go towards the next summer or the next whatever. And like he said, the international trips are not cheap because international flights are a lot. So, other questions, comments, concerns?
Google Maps says Memphis is 9 hours and 55 minutes.
9 hours, 55 minutes, there we go.
Whole hour.
We're gonna have some fun. That'll be a fun van ride, don't worry. Yes.
Is there a minimum number of kids that have to sign up to go, to be able to go?
There is a minimum number for us to be able to go. That is a number I was hoping to be able to have walking in here, but my van guy is trying to move some stuff around to get us vans, and depending on his answer, I have the answer to that, but he wasn't able to get it to me, sadly, right now, because getting vans, that's actually something to be praying about. Vans are terrifyingly difficult to get right now, 12 and 15 passenger vans. It's across the board. It's not just my van guy. Enterprise can't get them. Enterprise, actually, because they're one of the bigger companies, they're charging like $275 a day for one van, because they're one of the only organizations that has vans. So our guy's trying to get more, but they're really expensive, and there's this whole thing. So that's actually a big prayer request, is to figure out vans. If we can't get them, we'll get creative. We'll figure something out. Like, it's not like we won't go, but that's my biggest question mark on the expense of vans, is that determines my minimum number. And I unfortunately wasn't able to get that right this second. Do you have a question?
Well, that's what I was kind of gonna ask. You kind of answered it. Like, if they can't get the vans, would it possibly be cheaper, or eventually just to fly down, rent a car, and fly back? Or rent vans, if you can't.
If we can get the vans, but that's a national problem right now. It's not just here that we're just having trouble with getting the passenger vans. Like, just to put it in perspective, our van guy told us 2 years ago he had 64 vans. He's down to 10. So that's and that's like everywhere is like that. So we'll have to figure that out. But we might get creative with that. Again, there's gonna be a question mark, and it's one of those things that we're gonna have to go on based off of faith and be praying through, and like hoping and knowing that the Lord will provide in that way. So we're gonna have to be praying about that and figure that out together. Other questions? Final call. Yes?
Will Remedy be joining us again?
Remedy is not joining us for this trip. Good question. This is a Connect Church trip. Okay, I'm gonna pray, and then y'all can get on your way. I know you probably want to go over and get some lunch somewhere. Thanks for coming. I'm excited about this trip. Again, if you have questions, you can feel free to contact me. You have my email, but if you don't, it's tm@connectchurch.xyz. Yeah, let me pray, and then see you later. Lord, we thank you so much for the opportunity to go to Memphis and serve and be your hands and feet in that awesome city. We ask that as the students are thinking about and praying about if this trip is for them, if they want to be on this trip with us, I ask that you would illuminate their hearts and their minds to show them what you want them to learn on this trip, what it might look like for them to toss themselves aside for a minute for the benefit of somebody they don't know who doesn't act like, think like, look like them, so that they can actually learn a bigger truth about the gospel and how you made them to be, and how you made the world to be, and how much you actually love us. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everybody.